All right, and we are back here on the GSMC Football Podcast. And for the second part of the show, we are going to talk about the Dallas Cowboys. We'll talk about them reuniting with Ezekiel Elliott as well as what they did with their draft. So, they did sign Zeke to a one-year deal, and he's back into the fold. So, the Cowboys this offseason, they signed Eric Hendricks, Royce Freeman, and Ezekiel Elliott. Now, again, context does matter. You can look at some of the guys that they have to pay and their cap space situation. And you could say, okay, kind of makes sense why they didn't make a ton of moves. But again, this comes off of Jerry Jones saying we're all in. Well, what does that mean? If you're just going to go out there and sign a couple of running backs and a linebacker. What does that mean? Because when you think all in, you're thinking, all right, well, they're going to make trades. They're going to sign people. Yeah, I mean, they signed a few players, but, two of them are for one position, and you signed a linebacker. Now, with Ezekiel Elliott coming back into the fold, and I know NFL social media accounts, they're posting up, Zeke's back, and you're showing all his highlights from his rookie season. Now, that was back in 2016. That's going to be 8 years ago. Ezekiel Elliott is not the same player. He's not. So the Cowboys are not getting that player. And I think reasonable Cowboy fans know that's the case. They're not getting the same player from that time. Because Ezekiel Elliott, his rookie season, was arguably the best running back in the NFL. He was unbelievable. And people say he should have won Offensive Rookie of the Year over Dak. And even Dak said it, I'm pretty sure. Or at least they both should have won it together. Because they both played well in 2016. And many people looked at the Cowboys at the time as it being Zeke's team. And then it kind of transformed into Dak's team. And then, Zeke started to decline, and you had Tony Pollard coming into the fold. And, in 2022, it was Tony Pollard running the ball most of the time. And Zeke would come in. He would still be that goal line running back. And, if Pollard got hurt or something, Zeke would get put in. But, yeah, that was Tony Pollard in 2022. But you know what? It worked. It was a nice duo that you had, with Pollard being the lead guy, and then you had Zeke as well. But then they let Zeke go, and he went to the Patriots for a season, and now he's back again. And you got Rico Dowdle, Deuce Vaughn, and Royce Freeman to go along with Zeke. So I guess that's what they're going to roll with going into 2024. That's going to be their running back room. So I think for the Cowboys, they're really banking on one of their younger guys in Dowdle, in Deuce Vaughn, to pop off and be that guy. And then you have Zeke as well. I mean, I guess that's how I look at it. Maybe I'm wrong, and Zeke is the RB1. But I don't think so. I think you would think it's going to be either Dowdle or Deuce Vaughn. Royce Freeman was brought in for depth. But, bringing in Ezekiel Elliott, it's not like you'd be like, oh, well, yeah, they're bringing him in for depth, but he's been there before. So he's going to have a role on this team. But I can't look at him as you're the lead back, because that's not who he is anymore. Now, could he prove us all wrong? I mean, he actually was the lead back in New England because Ramondre Stevenson got hurt. He finished the season, I think he had like a little over 600 yards rushing, I think. Now, again, I don't think Zeke is horrendous now, but I mean, he's not. You look at his highlights from 2016, he is not that guy anymore. Now, he's definitely going to be somebody that they'll use at the goal line and when they want to pick up a third and short, pick up a first down. But that's really what he is. 2016, that is in the past. So, I mean, you get him on a cheap deal. He's familiar with the system. But that's really it. Now, if you told me, hey, you're getting the Zeke from 2016, oh, this is a home run signing. Cowboys are going to be running the football well next year. And that's not going to happen. When it comes to Zeke. Now, when it talks about the Cowboys running game as a whole, yeah, I don't know what to expect. We really didn't see a lot from these guys. Well, we saw Dowdle more than Deuce Vaughn, but yeah, now they're going to take on bigger roles. And we'll see how they respond to that. I mean, you go back to, I'm thinking of again, these guys haven't made their mark yet, but you go back to 2015, right? They lose DeMarco Murray. And then Darren McFadden comes in and he rushes for 1,000 yards behind that offensive line. Now, the offensive line's different now, but I mean, the Cowboys, I think, are still going to have a good offensive line where I think the running backs will be okay. It's just how effective will they be? Because for the Cowboys, you want to have a balanced running attack. And if you're not a balanced offense, again, you put a lot of pressure on Dak Prescott to have to throw the ball constantly. And you saw last year, I think Pollard did have over 1,000 yards, but still, something was off with the running game. So, I don't know. I mean, again, this signing does not move the needle at all. But, again, it's a guy that's familiar with the team, a familiar face. And, again, it's really going to be on Dowdle and Vaughn, I think, to be one of them has to separate and be the lead back. So, and again, the Cowboys' offensive line, we'll see how it is. You lost Tyron Smith this offseason. We'll get into their draft class in just a second. But I don't know. I don't know. But they did bring back Zeke. And again, it's not a needle mover. It's not something that we should all go crazy over. But it's just kind of funny how the world works with some things. And, again, they let Zeke go. And you thought that was it. But he's back. He's back in the fold. So, but I wanted to go over what the Cowboys did in their draft. So they did draft offensive tackle Tyler Guyton out of Oklahoma. So that's going to be the Tyron Smith replacement. They drafted a defensive end from Western Michigan, Marshawn Nealand. They also drafted another offensive lineman, Cooper Beebe from Kansas State, a linebacker out of Notre Dame, Marist Liufau, a corner from Wake Forest, Kalen Carson. They drafted a wide receiver from Missouri State, Ryan Flanor. Nathan Thomas, another offensive lineman in the 7th round out of Louisiana, and then defensive tackle from Auburn, Justin Rogers. So that's what the Cowboys did. They did draft a receiver. And speaking of receivers, one of their old receivers that they let go, Michael Gallup, he signed with the Raiders. So he joins that receiver room with Jacoby Myers, Devontae Adams, and Trey Tucker. So I think that's an okay signing for the Raiders. bringing another receiver. And, they just drafted Brock Bowers. So I like the playmakers that they got, throwing the ball. And we'll see how the running game is now that they lost Josh Jacobs. But, that's an okay signing for them, I guess. But that's what the Cowboys did. Some offensive linemen, receiver, drafted some guys on defense. Again, not gonna pretend that, I know some of these guys. But you look at their first selection, taking an offensive tackle to replace Tyron Smith. That's big. That's big. Again, we'll see how he is. I mean, again, there's always going to be some growing pains when you're transitioning into the NFL. But I mean, that was a position they had to address when you're losing Tyron Smith. So you look at their offensive line. So it's going to be Guyton at left tackle. You got Tyler Smith at left guard. Brock Hoffman, their center. Zach Martin at right guard. And Terrence Steele over at right tackle. So I know I mentioned that offensive line from when Darren McFadden and DeMarco Murray. Zach Martin's the only offensive lineman from those years. Because now Tyron Smith is gone. Travis Frederick and Doug Free, those guys retired. Yeah, it's different now. But actually, so right now on the depth chart here on ESPN, they have Zeke listed as the RB1. But I mean, I guess, but I don't know. I feel like he shouldn't. Well again, we're about to be in May. It's we're far away from the season, but that's just how they have it listed here on ESPN.com. So, but yeah, I mean, again, we'll see how the Cowboys draft class impacts them in 2024. Again, this segment was all about Zeke and his return after a year absence from the team. Brief stint in New England. But yeah, we'll see how big of a role he has. But again, he's not the same Zeke. But I mean, maybe he'll come out and have a renaissance, and he goes out there and he recaptures some of that magic from his first couple of seasons in the league. But I don't see it, and especially with that position. But now with the Cowboys, I mean, for me, I know I talked about this recently. Did they get any better? I mean, again, we'll see how their draft class is, but in the grand scheme of things, well, more specifically with the NFC, where do I rank them? It's still they're top 5. That's what they are, and they're probably 5th in my opinion. I think the Eagles are better than them. I think the Packers and the Lions are, and then you got the 49ers. They're 5. And there's some other teams that maybe could find their way in, and I'd put them over the Cowboys, but no, I mean, right now I look at them as better than every team in the South. I'd still put them over the Bears and the Vikings because, those two teams, they got rookie quarterbacks, and the Vikings are probably going to be starting Sam Darnold week 1, I would imagine, but I could be wrong. And then I would probably still put them over the Rams. The Rams, I think they're a little bit outside the top 5 at the moment, especially because Aaron Donald retiring. But and the Rams, we'll talk about their draft class as well, but they did go heavy on defense in the draft. So, but I mean, that's where the Cowboys are, I think. Top 5 team in the NFC, but they're 5, in my opinion. But let me know what you guys think about that. So, before we go into our next break, just want to remind you guys again to tip or donate and get your comments recognized. Make sure to go to the following link. That is GSMCPodcast.net. Again, that really helps the show, makes the show more interactive between myself, the host, and you guys, the viewers. Again, that is GSMCPodcast.net. And as always, it is displayed on the ticker at the bottom of the show segment down below. So when we come back from our second break of the show, we'll talk about another team's draft that I liked, and that was the Pittsburgh Steelers. We'll talk about what they did, and that is what we'll do when we come back from our second break of the show. So with that being said, stick around, and we'll be right back here on the GSMC Football Podcast.